Hello everybody, welcome back to High Ground. My name is Tanner, and today we're going to be doing predictions for phase number 1 of the Montreal Major. And the reason we're not doing phases 2 or 3 just yet is because you do have additional time to get those predictions in. So for phase number 1, you have just under a week to submit your predictions. For phase number 2, you have 3 more days than that, so just under 10 days to get them in. And for the finals, for which we don't even yet know the prediction format, you have just under 2 weeks, so even more days on top of the phase 2 prediction cutoff. So let's look at the format really quickly before we actually talk about individual predictions. So again, like I said, you have a week to get these in, so don't feel rushed. It is the same as it was last year, at least for phases 1 and 2. Phase 3, again, is kind of different, and the reward structure also different. If you weren't around for the last major doing the predictions, I'll link this below just so you have easy access to this, but you predict 2 teams that you think will go 2-0 and 2 teams that you think will go 2-1. For each team that you get correct, even if they're in the wrong spot, you get 1 point, and then for each correct position you have, you get an additional point. So 8 points possible in phase number 1, and then in phase number 2, there are 16 possible points. So you predict 2 teams to go 3-0, 3 teams to go 3-1, and 3 teams to go 3-2. So again, for each team you get right, that's a point, and for each position you get right, that's another point. So 8 points in phase 1, 16 points in phase 2, that's 24 total. And then again, finals, we don't yet know the prediction structure. Last year, there were only 3 points available. You basically just had to predict who was going to be in the grand finals and then what was going to happen there. But this time around, they changed up the reward structure. Last time, you only needed 14 points to get the battle pass, and 27 was the highest number of points you can get. This time, you need 25 points for the battle pass and 31 for the highest tier. And this makes me really nervous because we don't know how many points are available in phase number 3, but there are 7 matches in phase number 3. There's 4 quarterfinals, 2 semifinals, and 1 grand final. So if they just have you predict each individual match and you get 1 point for each you get right, that would be 7 points. That would mean to get all of the rewards, you have to predict perfectly. And to get the battle pass, you could only miss 6 points. So it's much less forgiving than it was last year, unless there are just a lot of points in phase number 3. You know, maybe they'll have it to where you get 2 points for each match you predict correctly in the finals. We'll have to see. I feel like that's not going to be the case. I feel like they want a lot fewer people to get the battle pass than did last year. So if you got the battle pass off my predictions last time around, I really can't guarantee that's going to happen again. It's going to be really difficult to get these higher tiers. Let's talk about the plans. I'm going to switch over to a bracket that I made really quickly, but first let me show you this, and we'll come back to this at the end to actually put in the predictions. You can pick any of the 20 teams at the event here, but only 8 of the teams are playing in phase number 1. So don't pick Space Station, don't pick Liquid. The only teams that you can pick from, you should pick 4 of these 8 teams, are Alpha Team, Black Dragons, Fear X, CAG, Chiefs, CL4L. It's actually the first 6 teams are some of the possible teams, and then G2 and Team Falcons. Don't pick any of the other teams in phase number 1. They are not playing in phase number 1. You'll get no points for those picks. So with all of that being said, let's now switch over to a bracket, talk about the matches, and talk about how I think things might go. Let's start with Black Dragons versus CL4L. And first, let me address this. There's a lot of weirdness with a lot of the rosters. So CL4L, there's the whole Tristan thing. For Alpha Team, 3 of their players are not able to attend the major, so that really throws a wrench into things. They probably weren't getting much done. Anyways, Chiefs, they have the same roster as playoffs, but Jigsaw only joined for playoffs. He didn't play with them in the regular stage. And then FearX, they've had the same roster for the entire stage, but they were supposed to have Jax the entire time. At first, he couldn't make it for the regular stage, and then he couldn't make it for the playoffs or LCQ for some reason, even though it seemed like he would be able to. And now he can't even play at the major. He also posted that he's looking for a team, so it really didn't work out for them. So maybe that's good for them that they've been playing with the same team. Maybe that hurts them because they've been scrimming with Jax a bunch. I don't know if they have or not. Anyways, a bunch of weirdness with these teams, and also compared to last year, it feels a lot more ambiguous. Like, it really felt like the big 4 teams last year in phase number 1 were Liquid, Space Station, G2, and Bleed. It didn't quite pan out that way, but it really felt that way coming into it. It feels a lot more murky. So anyways, without further ado, let's talk about it. Black Dragons versus CL4L. Had CL4L not had the roster debacle, maybe I would have gone with them, but I'm certainly going to go with Black Dragons here. As a result of that, Black Dragons has the only player in the lobby here that will have played at a major before in Ask, and if you're not aware, CL4L, Tristan not going to the major, Uzi is taking his place. So keep that in mind. Black Dragons, they did go 0-9 in best of 1 round robins, but it's all best of 3s here. They You know, they cleaned up in their LCQ, just like all the other LCQ teams did, obviously. That's the nature of the LCQ. But they come from a really competitive region. They have that tier 1 experience. I'm going to go with Black Dragons here. G2 versus Cyclops. I mean, this feels like a lock-in. Cyclops is a very experienced team internationally, but they do almost nothing almost every time. They had a decent run at the last major, but still nothing to write home about. Yes, G2 was worse. G2 went out in phase 1. Cyclops made it into phase number 2, but seems very unlikely that's going to happen again. G2 feels like a locked-in pick here. Alpha Team versus Falcons, like I said, you know, maybe Alpha Team, you could have had a little bit higher expectations for them had they been able to muster their whole team, but with that not being the case, Falcons is an obvious pick here. And then Chiefs versus FearX. This feels like the hardest call in this first round for me. I really deliberated on this one. To me, it feels like Chiefs have both a higher ceiling potential and also a lower floor potential. Like they could end up being quite good. They could end up burning out really quickly. I went with them because FearX, they really, just like Cyclops, have a long history of going to majors, but not doing well at majors. Yes, they did beat G2 last time, and they at least ran it kind of close up against Bleed, but ultimately they did still go out in phase number 1, and so I went with Chiefs. I wouldn't blame you for flipping this one, but that's what I'm going with, and that sets up some lower bracket matchups, but let's talk about the first round of qualifications first. Black Dragons up against G2. This could go either way, but I do feel like G2 are certainly the favorites in this matchup. I'm going to go with them there. That would have G2 qualifying, and then we have Falcons up against Chiefs. This is sort of like Chiefs versus FearX, maybe even more so. This really feels like a coin flip. I do feel like Chiefs have a few things going for them. I feel like their roster on average is a little bit more experienced with the likes of Tex and Jigsaw and Oda. Falcons, they have some recent pickups. They actually have they have a pair of brothers who, let me know in the comments, are they twin brothers or are they just regular brothers? I'm not actually sure. They look pretty similar, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're twins. But cool storyline nonetheless. Falcons, their region, Middle East, North Africa, they don't play playoffs. They only play best of ones. The team that came out on top of the best of one round robin is the team that goes to the major. That's the only reason that does it. So that's sort of a disadvantage. No best of 3 experience in their regular stage. But ultimately, I just had a gut feeling. I went with Falcons. Wouldn't blame you for flipping this one. So that is Falcons advancing as well. And then in the first round of the lower bracket, CL4L up against Cyclops. I went with CL4L. This could go the other way. CL4L, you know, really volatile for a variety of reasons. I went with them. Play Cyclops, much more experienced than them. Will the lights be too bright for CL4L? I think that'll be the biggest differentiating factor. Alpha Team up against FearX. Again, I just can't in good conscience pick Alpha Team in the current state of things. And again, even if they had the full team, I would be picking them to go 0-2 certainly. So that's FearX advancing, and that leaves 2 final matchups. Let's talk about Black Dragons versus FearX first. I'm gonna go with Black Dragons. I mean, again, FearX, more experienced team. A lot of these teams from the big regions, I guess particularly Black Dragons and CL4L, are very inexperienced in general versus the very experienced teams like Cyclops and FearX from the smaller, weaker, whatever you want to call it, regions. But still, I think Black Dragons is the more reasonable pick here, but it could be FearX. We'll have to see. So that leaves Chiefs versus CL4L, another one that I was really thinking about. So I guess all of the Chiefs matches I set up are the ones that I had to think the most about. And I think they are perhaps the biggest wild card for a few reasons, but I think these 3 teams are in phase number 1, the biggest wild cards: Falcons, Chiefs, and CL4L. I went with CL4L because 1, I think this is pretty close. Maybe it'll end up not being that close, but with the information we have now, it feels kind of close. Ultimately, I am picking the team that I want to win. I don't want to pick against CL4L and root for them. You know, it's just sort of an awkward thing. Do I want to be right, or do I want the team that I actually want to win to advance? So I went with CL4L. You might want to go with Chiefs. You know, feel free to do so, but that's what I'm going to go with. So G2, Falcons, CL4L, and Black Dragons. Those are my picks, and let's switch back to the website to fill in the actual picks. Okay, so again, it doesn't matter which order you have these teams in, just make sure the teams on the left are the teams you think are going 2-0, and the teams on the right are the teams going 2-1. So I went with G2, and I went with Falcons, Team Falcons, they're down here. And then at 2-1, I went with Black Dragons, and I went with CL4L. So again, I wouldn't blame you if you had like Chiefs over Falcons or maybe CL4L. I do feel fairly strongly about G2 being here and Black Dragons being here, But honestly, I think any position could go to almost any team. Don't pick Alpha Team, though. I just feel like that is by far the worst team you can pick. And yeah, that's what I'm going to go with. Let me know what you're going with. If I don't get you that battle pass, you know, I did my best. But anyways, maybe I'll have some other videos between now and then, but certainly at some point I'll be doing predictions for the playoffs, aka phase number 2, and then also for the finals, aka phase number 3. Stay tuned for those, and I will catch you guys next time.